Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of HeyJuni Unplugged. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the LGBTQ community and talk about how family and community affect their mental health and their emotional well-being. Again, I have Nora and James here. So I think to start with, I wanted to share with you something that I found on Reddit. Let me just read it aloud and share with you guys. So someone wrote on Reddit, I don't know why I'm posting this here, considering most people are non-religious or liberal, but I am genuinely so lost and depressed. I don't know what to do. I'm a conservative and religious person that somehow ended up not being straight. The only two options are embracing my sexuality, thus leaving my religion, severing my relations with all the close people I love, or to continue living in abstinence of my own emotions. I might choose the latter. I love my religion and I don't want to lose my friends, family, and education. Yeah, so I when I read this, I felt like, hey, this is like such a conflicting situation for that person, right? Because it is very important to have your family and your support system and religion also and your belief as your base, right? As your base of security, love, and confidence as well. But at the same time, this person is not able to really fulfill their wishes, as in live like, you know, in a very true and honest way. Right. Yeah. So maybe the first question goes to Nora. Like when you think about someone like that and maybe coming to you as a therapist, what would be, like, you know, the concerns or the emotional concerns that you see that person might face?
I think when they come with the conflict in their communities and feel like being isolated, we first, of course, they're coming very depressed, anxious, and sometimes the depressed could be very, very severe because they feel so powerless and controlless because sometimes that's where they are supposed to get their support. However, right now they have a conflict and it seems to feel like it's a dead end. So it causes a lot of stress and it leads to very depressed, anxious and isolated. Sometimes they feel lonely because they couldn't find people that they can trust to talk to. And sometimes they feel like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I shouldn't do this way. I should go back to where I was. So a lot of them feel lost. And sometimes they feel like I just isolate myself. I don't want to talk to anybody.
It must be something that is very difficult to cope. I said, and that's why you mentioned these, like, you know, okay, like where do they turn to? They can't turn to their community. They can't turn to anyone else because they can't, like, open up the secret. Maybe they can't even open up towards their friends because the family is connected to the friends. So they just keep it to themselves, and this frustration builds up in, you know, or this frustration leads to drug abuse, unhealthy coping like mechanisms. Maybe like to James, like, have you seen in any, like, you know, cases where you are a community care person where, you know, you have met actually these people who are trapped in this situation and you see, you know, the exact thing that Nora described before?
Especially when you consider like women, right? Like girls, they have to struggle with a lot more of like the expectations of, oh, you're supposed to grow up, supposed to have a family, you're supposed to find someone soon before you become old, you know. So it's like there's this whole idea of that you have to fit this role or you are declared not useful. You know, it's like suddenly there's this whole sense of like, oh, so there was no meaning if I don't find a husband, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But then, okay, let's talk about the coming out, like you just mentioned, right? So you mentioned like friends and then family, like, or like, the cultural kind of surrounding that you're in. To me, with friends, yes, it might be easier, and you can be like you feel like you are more easily accepted if you are admitting to your sexuality or your gender orientation. But with families, it's also very nuanced, right? Like whether you come out with your mom or your dad first, or maybe your siblings.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know, like as for example a girl, I would assume that maybe coming out to a mom, to a mother would be easier, right? Or what do you guys think?
I think it's a mix. So it depends on who is the more conservative one. It also depends on, because you have this dynamic of parent-child, right? There was this one thing that I read about where it was this girl. She actually decided that, you know what, the person that I've grown up with my whole life is my sister. So in fact, she came out to her sister first, and the sister was actually very accepting. She was like, the sister's response was like, oh, no wonder you have you only have all of your K-pop idol fans, right, are all female. It's like you don't go after like the male K-pop fans. Yeah, but the thing is that she never came out to the parents because of that parent-child dynamic. But she was glad to at least say like, okay, at least my sister is supportive. And the sister was like, okay, fine, I know how strict the mom and dad are. This will be our secret.
Yeah, but sometimes it's good enough, right? Like you don't need like an entire community to stand behind you.
It's a different stage, right? And I think James bring up very good points. She instead, coming out to the parents, she can identify who is the support in her system. And I think the same thing, when Malia saying they feel trapped, like in both sides. I think sometimes the key words is they feel trapped. I'm not saying we don't validate their emotion, because we do feel trapped in that situation. But I think when people like in that situation come into therapy, sometimes we validate their feelings because it's so real, and I cannot even picture myself if I'm in their position. I cannot even do better or having that courage to come to therapies, right? Let's talk about what you can do. We cannot change the society. We cannot change your parents. What can we do? What we can do? What's our coping skills? Yeah. What can you do to release your stress while you are still looking for identify your support system? Or for example, the example here, she was able to identify one of the sisters is supportive, right? So and maybe at that stage, it's good enough. And slowly, with the support, with the help with the sister, she can slowly come up to expand her community.
But have you ever had like a situation where a client like comes to you and she is experiencing this, and she her family is involved, and then you would have like her family with you as well, as in like you have to like you have to be like the middle woman for like the entire family to get connected together again regarding like this issue that affects the whole family as well, right? Because of course the person who experiences this firsthand because of their own gender and sexuality, gender orientation and sexuality, they would be probably the most affected. But I mean, like seriously, like sometimes families are affected too, as in like their dynamics, their trust and belief in each other, and mom and dad or whoever is involved can also be affected by it. Like, have you actually ever had to like be like the middle person to solve this for our family?
We do, and it's difficult, I think, for everybody. But I would say, by coming as a family, it's a first step for them. And maybe the daughter or the kids wants to convince the parents, or they kind of give up. Okay, my parents wants me to come here and try to fix me. And parents, yes, they may come in and then say, tell her she's not correct. She's wrong, right? Asking us as a therapist to tell the children that no, you're not wrong. But I think it doesn't matter their expectation when they first come. But I think the important thing is they are willing to sit in the same room and have open discussion. And that will be a big movement, because when they first come in, they don't even talk to each other, or they don't trust each other, right? At some point. So I think by communicate, that's a big sign, first step to open the door. They can agree on their disagreement, right? I think by the end of the day, I think it's important to know the love is still there. I think that we are not in a position to tell the children you are wrong. We are not in a position to really educate the parents that, hey, you should respect your kids, because that's also parents' belief, their religion, right? And I think it's really our role. I think for me at that time, our role is where to find the communication, the channel. And it does take time. As long as there's a communication, I think, and the love, the relationship, I think eventually we will be able to find some alternative way to figure things out. But we need to build that foundation first.
So I find like, peer support, like, going a bit deeper into this, like I think, like you said, like, finding a peer that can support you can be everywhere. That's what you're saying, right? It could be at your work, it could be at your school, it could be at, I don't know, your basketball club, right?
Like sports.
Yeah.
book
So
club,
is it part of building resilience?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's also about forging a bond. I think I could see that, like, for some of these people, maybe they might find, like, oh, if they engage in sports, right, then they don't have to focus on, like, the stress of life,
But isn't that then avoidance?
It's avoidance in a sense.
No, I think for us, right, for example, if you want me to introduce myself, I wouldn't just say, hey, I'm Nora, I'm straight. Right? I think
It would be a
we
bit
right,
bizarre.
because
It's
we
very
wouldn't
bizarre,
say, so we don't
yeah.
expect a lesbian say, hey, I'm Nora, I am lesbian. And then what are, right? Us, sexual orientation is just one part of our identity, our life. We also explore other,
more than that.
Yeah, more than that, right? I like to start. I like to read the book. What's my favorite author? I like to paint. I like to cycling, right? So I think there are other areas that we can identify ourselves. Yeah, to build your resilience while you are dealing with that. It's a major issue, right? You are sexual orientation, and if there's a conflict with your community, but this is how you build your resilience for you to cope with that conflict or the things that you feel you are trapped.
Then how else do these people actually build the resilience? Because I feel like they don't have a lot of resources. Because a lot of times, to me at least, I feel like family is a source where where you find your bond, where you find your strength and resilience as well. So if family is not like a lifeline for you anymore because they are not supportive of your constitution, then okay, finding support elsewhere, resilience elsewhere. But like, what if we don't even have that? What if this person is just really, really lonely and she doesn't have that circle of friends, doesn't have colleagues? Then what? Like, how to build resilience?
Because in this case, like, online anonymous help, right? It's like you're talking to a complete stranger. You can talk about anything and everything. It's like, this person is anonymous, they don't know you, you don't know them. Maybe some of them will think, like, even if this person doesn't accept it, this person is anonymous. I just telling you something so that at least someone else hears
You have
what
an
they
outlet.
have to say.
Yeah.
Right? This person's
I
like,
know,
yeah.
I know what you mean, but sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but like, you long for a family.
Yeah.
Like, you want a family, and a family doesn't need to be like your family by birth, right? Like, it could be a very close circle of family, people you consider family, the core support that they have, or this one real person, this one source of inspiration, empowerment, like the sister that you mentioned earlier before.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you don't need like the whole internet to support you. You just need this one person. But if you don't have that one person, I feel like it's very hard.
It is hard, right? But I think that if truly the reality is you cannot see or you do not identify anybody right now in your life, I always tell my clients is, you start from taking care of yourself. You be that person taking care of yourself.
But I totally get you, right? So to be honest here, I deal with anxiety issues myself. And, my husband is very supportive of me, like really, really. But sometimes, like, I feel like helping myself is the most empowering feeling. Like in moments of anxiety when I feel like, okay, this is something that I want to be under control of. And for example, like, implementing like breathing techniques or writing journals and all of these things, and just doing it by myself, right, help me to cope, these anxious moments that I have. And everything really comes down to like helping yourself actually. And of course, having other people to support me, that's also very crucial. But you're right, like in critical moments, sometimes you just don't have that someone, and you are by yourself. And that's when you really need to actually like develop your own like coping skills and coping mechanism that you can implement when you don't have anyone. And it comes back to like what you said, right? You can do it actually by yourself too.
Right. And after you have after you do self-caring, right? And I think you will have that, you don't have to spend all your energy fighting your depression, your loneliness, your anxiety. Maybe you still feel depressed, you feel anxious, but at least by taking care of yourself, maybe the level or the intensity of being depressed and anxious is not as strong. So you will have some energy to find an alternative support in your life, or alternative way to, maybe you will be able to have the energy to go online to find a cycling club or to talk to your sister. That might be supportive. But if you are so in the darkness, you might not even be able to identify who can help you, like your sister. Only if you can take care of yourself, and then you might be able to have some energy to help yourself to identify. Yeah.
But this is again like kind of like difficult in the situation of a person who wants to be honest and about like their identity, right? And the thing is that, well, you want to take care of yourself, but at the same time, let's say this person is a lesbian and she wants to, like live like to truthfully to her own identity, but then at the same time she fears that her parents, her family is rejecting her and not like accepting her for who she is, so she keeps it secret for herself, because actually she is taking care of her family as well. So it's very tricky because like she wants to take care of herself, as in, hey, I want to be who I am, I want to be like this strong person to acknowledge what I truly feel. But at the same time, so this is self-care, right? But then at the same time, she also needs to take care of her family, as in she thinks like nonstop about her family, of like what to do to not disappoint her family, what to do to keep her family happy, what to do to keep her family intact. It's very exhausting.
So I think that will be the part of the healing journey, right? Because it's too much for her. So how about, for example, setting up boundaries? How much you can help, because you cannot just drag yourself just to fulfill the expectation of your family, right? I'm not saying that you just distance yourself, but I think people have different ways to find a good distance with your family and the boundaries. So it is very important. I think even a couple, a married couple, they need to have some boundary too, to protect yourself, right? And I think also down the road, if you have the resilience and if you are able to have enough support yourself, or finding a support system, we sometimes just accept we are different, right? We might need to accept the realities. My family will never accept that I'm a lesbian, I'm gay, but where to find the peace in your mind to accept that that's the reality. Because we cannot change your parents, we cannot change other people. What we can do is to change how we view the whole thing. But it is a very difficult journey, and it's a long journey.
Yeah, but definitely a very, very difficult and tiring journey, because like the person who goes through all of this in order to learn about themselves, accepting themselves, and acknowledging themselves, is also trapped with shame, right? Because like they feel ashamed, not because maybe they are ashamed about themselves, but they know that if they are coming out, they're gonna shame their family. So it's like shame, guilt, right? Anxiety, loneliness, right? Like so many things.
A lot of questions also. For some of these people who are religious, they'll even ask their personal God, like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
Of all people, why did this happen to me?
Anger.
They will start to question, like, was I not faithful enough? Is this a sin that am I being punished for something? It's like, why do I have this? And then in an Asian context, right, it's like we want to preserve that harmony. So for the sake of that harmony, how much are these people willing to sacrifice for their own happiness? Their own like sense of peace, to say that I'm happy with who I am, but it's like, no, for the sake of, I don't want there to be like a cold war every single time we have dinner. So it's better to just closet themselves in for the sake of that. Yeah, it is.
No, but sometimes it takes like even decades, right? There's this famous person in Germany called Michael Schumacher. So so he's the Formula One car racer, and his brother is Ralf Schumacher, and Ralf Schumacher is also kind of like a celebrity. He's like not as well known as his brother, but he's quite well known. So I think like 2 weeks ago, he came out in the media, and his ex-wife, who he is divorced to like recently, she didn't even know. So she only learned it from the media after like decades of being married to him. They knew each other since they were children, and only like decades and decades and decades later, when he's already in his 50s or so, she learned from the media that her ex-husband, I mean, like they only like recently divorced, but like she only learned from the media that he's gay. So what does it mean actually? Like he wanted to be in that kind of like role where he is, meeting the expectations of his parents maybe previously, meeting the expectations of the publicity of his wife, who he probably had a strong connection to, but he had to keep it to himself for so
Does he have
many
children?
years. Yes, he does.
So probably he may have wanted to keep the marriage intact for the sake
Exactly.
of the children. He didn't want to like give them a difficult choice of who do you want to live with.
Yeah. Imagine how hard that must be, right? Like this is, like you said again, it's a long journey. It's a tiring journey. And like you said, it's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make. Like you have to sacrifice a lot about yourself, how you want to truthfully live your life for the sake of others.
Right. Not just about yourself. And also I think they relate to the culture as well. Right?
Yeah.
In the culture, how much you do for other people, how much you encourage independence.
But also, to be honest, it also expresses how much you love your family, right?
Yeah.
It really is. Like you really care for them and you sacrifice yourself so that you can make your family happy. Yeah, so I think it is definitely something that we need to keep in mind when we having someone in our surrounding maybe having this problem. I think like, fetching these people, recognizing that, they are going through something. I feel like we could be like one of these like helpful sources, right? This one person that they can lean on. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of HeyJuni Unplugged. Again, if you have any comments, anything you want to share with us, reach out to us at www.heyjuni.com or write us an email at info@heyjuni.com. See you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.